It's funny coming directly from the video about Sony having all the live service games and having to cancel most of them. It's funny coming directly from recording that to recording this, because there we have a situation where Sony was so enthusiastic about games as a service, about turning all of their major IPs into live service experiences. They were so excited about that they greenlit way too many. And when they started to not perform well enough, they had to just cut their losses and cancel most of them and admit that maybe they had jumped the gun a little bit. Maybe that was not a wise business decision to just throw everything they had at all of these games rather than taking a more, a slower and more careful approach. Let's do a few at a time and see if they do well and then go from there. It's funny seeing maybe their course correction suggests that they have, more or less learned their lesson. We did jump the gun. That we were it was way too much, way too fast. In other news, though, we have about 1,000 movie adaptations coming. Just like a humongous list of Sony IPs are apparently being adapted into movies. I was not really aware of this. I hear little rumblings here and there. I know we got the first trailer for the Until Dawn movie, but then apparently they announced multiple movies at CES this year. They announced Horizon Zero Dawn and Helldivers movies, and they also announced a Ghost of Tsushima anime. And on top of that, okay, well, whatever. We'll go over the whole list in a little bit here. But the point is, though, they just announced 2 more movies and an anime for a series that is also getting a movie. And so I was curious. I'm just like, wow, that's a lot of movies. That's really bold. So I looked it up, and I'm looking at the list here, and yeah, they've got a bunch of movies in development. And previously, like, this is obviously a really big, a very big and very purposeful push from them. In the last couple years, they released an Uncharted movie and a Gran Turismo movie. And it seems that right now, in development, you want to know what they got? You know what they got right now? Okay. We've got Until Dawn, which actually releases in a few months. And that one's pretty interesting because Until Dawn, the whole point is it's kind of a choose your own adventure slasher game. The whole thing is so you're choosing your way and, different outcomes and whatnot. So that's kind of reflected in the movie from what I've heard is it's got like a meta element where these people are being slashered or whatever, but then they're like waking up in different horror genres or something like that. I haven't looked too much into it, but I know some people are upset that it doesn't have the same plot and the same characters, but at the same time, I can kind of understand that they had to go with a meta element because otherwise you just have a more boring, non-choose-your-own-adventure version of the game. I actually don't think it's the worst idea to have, like, sort of the concept, sort of, not necessarily all the same characters. I don't know. I guess that's a whole discussion of its own. But yeah, that's Until Dawn. That's coming, which is a little surprising. I didn't necessarily think that Until Dawn, I mean, I'm sure the game was successful, but I didn't think it was like big enough to be like to adapt into a movie, but it could just be that Sony thought, well, you know what? It's not just about, we're not just trying to get the fans of the game. We're just trying to use the IP in a way that might hit general audiences. I don't know, whatever. But then they're also doing a Days Gone movie, which is an interesting choice. Days Gone did not perform super well. It did not review super well. I kind of feel like I was kind of under the impression it was a bit of a, I don't know, not to say like a blemish on their record, but like it really was not a very big success. But it could be another situation where Sony is like, it's not just about getting fans of the game to go to the theater. It's more about like, hey, we have this IP, and I think that this idea could work if adapted, and we own it. We own the characters. We don't have to come up with too much new stuff. So even if the game didn't do that well, why don't we just adapt it into a movie? Okay, sure. Then we also have Ghost of Tsushima, which again is also getting an anime series, and that's gonna be a movie. Okay, sure. Samurai movie. I could see that. Yeah, sure. And then Gravity Rush. Why is there? Well, I mean, Gravity Rush, very passionate fan base. I just know it didn't do super well. So it's another thing where it's like, is this them really wanting to adapt Gravity Rush to please the fans, or is it just we feel like we have an idea, we feel like it's a visual enough concept, we could make it into a movie? I don't know. I don't know much about it. I don't know if there is a lot of details on it. Maybe it was going to be an animated movie. Is this going to be a smaller budget streaming movie, or is this like really a theatrical movie? I don't know, but Gravity Rush movie, apparently. Then Helldivers, like we said, that was just announced at CES, and Helldivers is doing fine, and it's a good concept. I think it would probably, I mean, it's basically just Starship Troopers in video game form. So I don't really know how you adapt that into a movie without it just being Starship Troopers. I don't really know. But there you go. I think that it probably has potential. Out of all the games on this list, or all the series on this list, Helldivers probably would make a pretty darn good movie. I could see it working really well, especially if they get the guy who does all of the ads, the guy and who does the motion capture. He would do really well starring in the movie. I would hope so. And then you have Horizon Zero Dawn, which, I mean, yeah, I could see it. I guess so. There's a reason the games themselves were appealing. It's just robot dinosaurs, post-apocalypse future. It's just cool. It's very visual, so I could see that. But at the same time, that's going to be really, really expensive to make. That's going to be a really big thing. So they better pull it off. I mean, enough people bought it that maybe that alone will be enough to get a lot of bums in seats, but I don't know. And then also, apparently, they're doing a sequel to Uncharted, the Uncharted movie. And so it's a lot. And then, and then you've also, there's nothing to say of the shows, Last of Us Season 2. We got Twisted Metal. I don't know if they're doing any more of that. Yes, apparently it has been renewed. So there you go. And then upcoming in development, also God of War is getting a series on Amazon Prime. Okay, yeah, all right. So there's a lot. And so again, I can't help but look at this and be like, wow, you really are confident in this idea of making just a whole bunch of adaptations of your IPs. And you really are running a risk here. Is it like harder to cancel a movie? Is it like less common to cancel a movie in the middle of development than it is to cancel a game? I really don't know. I feel like we hear a lot more about canceled games than canceled movies. I could be wrong there, but like, is it unrealistic to imagine that the same situation could happen again? What if, like, in theory, hypothetically, let's say Until Dawn releases this April, and it is a major, major flop. One of those things where, like, you did not even almost make back the budget and the marketing. It barely made any money. Let's imagine for a second, probably not super likely, but let's just entertain the idea that the Until Dawn movie is a failure on about the same level as Concord was. What does Sony do? Do they cancel 3/4 of the rest of these? Do they say, uh-oh, maybe we jumped the gun a little bit, maybe we were a little too enthusiastic, or do they just keep moving ahead? I don't know. And it's interesting because on the live service side of things, this was a bit of a newer initiative, and they don't have as many live service games under their belt. Like Concord and Helldivers are and I guess they bought Destiny, so it wasn't exactly like their thing initially. But with movies, as far as like, the PlayStation productions, like, Sony themselves, they produce tons and tons of movies, they're all animated movies and Spider-Man, whatever. They have a long history of publishing movies, but this is specifically movies adapted from their game series, and this is under the PlayStation Productions banner. This launched in 2019, And since then, you know what? They've actually seen pretty good success. The Uncharted movie seemed like another one of those really just ill-fated, poor video game adaptations that kind of isolates everybody. You know, like the fact that the characters were so young, and it didn't seem worth much to Uncharted fans. But apparently, as a movie, it did pretty well. It seems like it just, even if it had nothing to do with the games, it seems that just the concept and, you know, Mark Wahlberg and whatnot, it seems that was enough to get people to go. It did pretty okay. It had a budget of 120 million. It made 400 million. And, you know, the marketing budget is probably in there too. But they made at least a couple $100 million off of that. So that did well enough. And then Gran Turismo, budget of 60, made 120. And again, we don't know how much the marketing budget was, but it seems that maybe that was still a pretty okay success. And it could be that Sony is more confident in these projects because of that. Because they've seen decent success in the movies they have put out. They have not yet had any sort of major flop disaster. And I do think it is possible that precisely because of their experience putting out movies, they maybe have a better idea of how to adapt these things into movies in a way, admittedly, that is less appealing to fans of these series, which is disappointing, and not appealing to fans of the series is one of the reasons that so many video game adaptations have done poorly. But at the same time, if you can still tweak it and make it appeal to general audiences instead, rather than appealing to no one, you know, that's the real doomed video game adaptation, is the one that's so different, because it's trying to appeal to everyone, that it doesn't appeal to the fans, and it also doesn't appeal to general audiences because it is still clearly this video game thing, and that's kind of isolating them in its own way. Sony might be striking a better balance here, or rather than a better balance, even if they're disappointing the fans, they might just be getting the general audiences. And that could be why, again, Until Dawn, it's not necessarily faithful. It's definitely going along with the concept, the slasher movie concept, and the meta horror element, but it's not really a direct adaptation, which is, it's disappointing fans, but that might just make it a better movie. And if that makes it just a fine horror movie, you know, horror movies, they can be very, very, very profitable. That is a constant in the movie industry. Horror movies get people to go to the theater. People just love them. They eat them up, they chew them up, and it's just, that's it. Give me more, and yum, yum, yum. They eat up horror movies like crazy. So it might do well. And again, Days Gone. Does it really matter that it's adapting the game, or did they just realize, hey, we could just make a good movie out of this? We'll just make a solid, widely appealing zombie movie. Ghost of Tsushima, I don't know, it'll be a samurai movie. There's probably plenty of samurai movies that do well. Gravity Rush, I don't know how that fits in, but however they're going to do it, maybe they have a good plan for it. Helldivers, that just seems like a perfectly fine idea for a movie. Horizon, possible, Uncharted sequel, yeah, sure. So yeah, I don't know. It was just really interesting to see how many they've got in development. And for all we know, they'll announce more. I don't know, like maybe when Until Dawn, if Until Dawn does really well, that could make them even more confident. And they'll be like, all right, okay, what's next? So we got God of War. That's getting a movie too, on top of the show. Bloodborne, that's not gonna happen. You know what I mean? Really anything could be announced. And it's just strange. It's strange to see a situation that could potentially end up mirroring the live service game situation, or it could not. Because again, they have a lot of experience in movies, in film. So who knows? I obviously don't have any solid numbers, but I would not be surprised if, like, a humongous amount of the people who watched and enjoyed Last of Us probably didn't even play the games. They probably just a good show. It just came out and people said, hey, this is good, and people love zombie shows. They love post-apocalypse shows. They just like it. They just think it's fun. And if Sony just keeps doing that, this could potentially work out for them, I guess. Time will tell, I guess. Parappa the Rapper, grand epic cinematic trilogy. Come on, Sony, you know you wanna.